This is the Fortune Chair by Heller Furniture, and it costs $1,175. But what if I could just 3D print it? After all, the chair is made of plastic, and I've 3D printed designer furniture before, like this Magic Spun chair.
Oh my God!
And while my 3D printed version was far from perfect, it showed me that this concept is possible. But why settle for a proof of concept? Can I 3D print the Fortune Chair so it looks just as good as one you would buy from a designer furniture store? Oh, and this time, no print farm. I'm 3D printing every single piece myself. Now, designers don't usually publish 3D models of their furniture online, so I had to recreate this chair completely from scratch. For the spun chair, this was actually pretty easy. I was able to find some drawings, and since this shape has circular symmetry, I could just trace the profile, rotate it around an axis, and adjust my model from some sneaky measurements I took at a fancy furniture store. But this shape is a bit more complicated. Or is it? It's really just an elongated fortune cookie, that's where the name comes from, and that's pretty simple to make. You just fold a circular piece of dough. But the 3D modeling software that I normally use, Fusion 360, is really bad for organic modeling like this. But I heard that there are some iPad apps that make organic sculpting really easy and intuitive. For this project, I learned Nomad Sculpt, and I would highly recommend it as a way to get started 3D sculpting. The app is only $20, and after a few hours of following along with some YouTube tutorials, I was pretty much ready to attempt the Fortune Chair. Unfortunately, my original plan of folding a virtual circle of dough didn't really work. The software just doesn't let you manipulate a disc in that way. At least after 3 hours of YouTube tutorials, I couldn't figure out how to do it. So I changed gears and started with a sphere. I could manipulate this like a ball of clay. Pushing, pulling, creasing, smoothing. I actually restarted this process 7 times, just taking what I learned and starting over with a fresh ball. It took me a full week to finally get a model that I was happy with, but the work wasn't over yet. Once I brought the STL into Fusion, I cut a section through the middle and saw that the seat profile was a little too chonky and lumpy. It looked like it would just dump you right out, so I spent another day making super subtle adjustments in Nomad Sculpt, bringing these models back into Fusion, checking a section view, and repeating this process until the profile finally looked like a comfortable Fortune Chair. Now, because I modeled this chair completely from scratch, I was a little worried that it was going to look too different from the real Fortune Chair, but when I brought in some reference photos to adjust the final proportions, I was stoked to see that my version looked almost identical to the real one. We had to split the Magic Spun chair into 63 pieces so that they could be made on the printers that Slant 3D uses at their print farm, but I only had to split the Fortune chair into 21 big chunks thanks to the sponsor of today's video, the Sovol SV08 3D printer. This Mountain Mama not only has a massive build volume, but it is fast, which is pretty important when you're printing 21 gigantic pieces. This first one only took 9.5 hours, and I thought it would save some filament by modeling in these big voids. But when I set up the second print, I was surprised to see that including the voids actually used more filament than not having them at all. This is because the vast majority of the print mass is in the walls. That infill is only 15%. It barely weighs anything. But if you replace that with solid walls, even if they enclose empty space, you're not really saving time or filament.
Morley, will this 3D printer be on our dining room table for the next 3 weeks? No, Eden. It will be on our bureau.
Now, because the SV08 is so fast, it's pretty loud, so I actually moved it onto my balcony so I could keep printing until I could move into my new studio a few days later. Printing outdoors is not normally recommended, especially when it's cold outside. It can wreak havoc with bed adhesion. But Sovol also sent me the enclosure for the SV08, which kept the print in a nice, warm, draft-free environment and allowed me to successfully print outside. But this outdoor 3D printing adventure was short-lived because while the enclosure protects the print from the cold, I don't think it protects it from water. And just in time for the rainy season to start, I finally got access to my new studio. To get all the pieces made, I was pretty much printing full-time for a month, and the SV08 is packed with convenient features that made this process easy, like Wi-Fi connectivity so I could send files wirelessly, and automatic bed leveling. If you're looking for a massive printer that is fast, capable, affordable, and open source, check out the Sovol SV08 via the link in the description. Oh, also, this color-changing PLA is also made by Sovol. I'll have a link for that down below as well. Okay, I have a confession. I kind of lied. Yes, I originally split the chair into 21 printable pieces, but you might have noticed that some of these pieces aren't taking full advantage of that giant build volume. I actually split up some of the awkwardly shaped pieces so I could avoid using any support material, and to make everything just go faster, I also split up some other pieces so I could print them in parallel on my smaller 3D printers. I modeled alignment holes into all the pieces and put them together with 3D printed dowels. These aren't providing any strength, they're just to line everything up. The strength is coming from 3D gloop. This was my first time using this stuff, and it's not a glue, it actually melts the PLA, so when you apply to two surfaces and press them together, you're essentially welding them together, creating a connection just as strong as the material itself. It's pretty amazing stuff. This was my first time using it, and it was about 1,000 times better than the epoxy mess I created with the Magis Spun chair.
The chair is falling apart as I'm putting it together.
Altogether, this took 17 spools of filament, bringing the running material cost of this chair to $306.
I kind of don't believe this is going to be the full chair. Am I missing a piece? 1, 2, 3, 4, 13, 14, 15, 19, 20, 21 pieces. All right, let's start putting it together. Yeah, like a pizza. All right, it's got a little bit of flex to it right now, but that was a big milestone. I was worried that one of the joints would break the moment we flipped it. Once we get the next layer on, that should help lock this shape in place, and from here on out, it's just gonna get stronger.
So this is the part of the video where you might expect me to tell you where I posted these files online so you can 3D print your very own $1,200 chair. But considering how this could justifiably be called a knockoff, I am very intentionally not posting these files online. I hope that Heller Furniture sees this video for what it is, a fun experiment that is incredibly impractical to scale, not cost-effective, and not a threat to their business. In fact, I hope it helps their business. I hope this video makes people see how cool this chair is, and they end up buying a real one. Posting the files could subvert this intention and turn this into a beast that I can't control. But at the end of the day, Heller Furniture could argue that this project still violates their intellectual property, turn around and sue me. So please, Heller Furniture, please don't sue me.
All right, it's the next day because unlike the last chair, I'm actually taking my time with the assembly of this one. So, oh, actually, you know what? I should show you this. I got a little inspiration on how not to assemble a 3D printed chair. Woo! Still really fun though. First sit test. Ooh, that is more comfortable than I thought it would be. We are getting dumped out a little. I should have scooped out this like slightly more. I had a feeling that might happen, but like, I mean, functionally, man, that's pretty sweet. This thing looks almost surreal, and I kind of want to leave it. In fact, I had some patrons and YouTube members hoping that I'm gonna keep this look, but the vision is to get this looking like the original, which means sanding the inconsistencies and disguising the patchwork. Just between you and me though, we know that it looks like this underneath.
Let me address the elephant in the room. Yes, I am sanding plastic, and I wanted to do everything in my power to avoid sending billions of tiny microplastics out into the environment, which is why I'm using my brand new big boy dust extractor, and dude, this thing rocks. It is wild. There is no visible dust in the air while you're using this thing, but just to be safe, I wore a respirator during all of the sanding, which didn't last too long before I switched gears to body filler. Sanding is only half the battle. Making this chair look like one homogeneous object involves a combination of sanding down high spots and filling in low spots, and it's really hard to see high spots with all of those colors. So I focused on the filling until I could prime the whole chair one single color, which would allow me to see what I was really dealing with on the sanding front. This stuff that I'm spackling on, body filler, aka Bondo, is traditionally used in automotive bodywork. Imagine you have a 50-year-old Corvette and you want to fix some rusted out areas. This is the stuff you would use, and I know the car people out there are probably screaming at their screens because of my terrible Bondo technique, but don't worry, I get a lot better throughout this project. After hours of filling seams, I sanded the entire chair with 80 grit, focusing on the Bondo, but before I could prime this thing and finally see the chair in a single color, I had to fix something.
Does tip forward a little bit, but we'll fix that later. Kind of helps you get out.
In hindsight, it seems obvious that a curved front edge would tend to tip forward. I even saw it in my scale model, and when you look at the real Fortune chair, you can see that they have these little feet to counteract that exact problem. So I printed some simple feet that are perfectly contoured around the base of the chair, used 3D gloop to glue them in place, and before that was fully cured, I put a piece of plywood on top to make sure that they all sat on the same plane. After working on this chair for 6 weeks, it was finally time to apply that first coat of primer and really see the overall shape for the first time. I was in no way expecting the chair to be perfectly smooth at this point. I knew I still had multiple rounds of filling and sanding ahead of me, but this was a big moment. I was so excited to see this as one homogeneous object in a single color. The stuff you see me applying here is filler primer. This is a super thick spray paint that's made to fill in inconsistencies, and I ended up using 7 cans of this stuff throughout the project, bringing the running material cost to $358. At first glance, the prime chair actually looks pretty smooth, and for a second there I thought, hey, this might be a lot less work than I expected. But the moment you shine a light at an angle to the surface, all of those nice blemishes are revealed. This was actually a super useful way to find areas that I needed to fill, and surfboard makers use this exact technique when they're shaping their boards. Now you might be thinking that this part is unnecessarily wasteful. I'm basically sanding away most of the primer that I applied, but remember, the goal here is to create a smooth surface by filling valleys and sanding down peaks. I'm just sanding off all the primer and Bondo that's on the peaks, and now when I go back with a second coat of primer, the surface is already so much smoother than after the first coat. After 2 coats of primer, we were looking pretty good, but not as uniform as I would like, so I went back for round 3 with the body filler. And for those keeping track at home, I used about a pound of Bondo, bringing the running material cost to $373. Oh, and I realized I forgot to include the 3D gloop. I used 2 4-ounce containers, double as much as I was expecting. That stuff isn't cheap at scale, and that bumps up our material cost to $443. I don't know how well it comes across on video, but this whole finishing process was incredibly satisfying. Honestly, I was dreading these rounds of filling and sanding, but I guess proper preparation paid off, and after that 3rd coat of primer, the chair was almost perfect. I did a few touch-ups with Bondo, a final sanding up to 220 grit, and it was finally time to get some color on this thing. All right, I know what you're thinking. Really, Morley, pumpkin orange? Well, I will have you know that this is rustic orange, but it goes on a little brighter, a little more Home Depot than I was expecting. And when I started spraying, I did think, have I made a terrible mistake? first coat didn't look great, but first coats never do. And as I applied second and third coats, this color really started to grow on me. The orange is a bit brighter than I planned, but I feel like it really fits the postmodern wild aesthetic of this chair. Now my wife, Eden, hasn't seen the chair since it was printing in our bedroom, so I was really excited to see her reaction to the finished piece.
Whoa! That is so good. Damn. I definitely call that pumpkin.
Pumpkin?
I like that it looks like handmade, like it looks like you molded it out of clay.
Yeah, it's not perfect, but it's pretty cool, I think.
I think it's really cool, yeah. Oh, that's actually really lovely.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Should I bring it back to our apartment?
No.
Special thanks to my top supporters on Patreon and YouTube memberships, Paige Arlt, Luis Armendariz, and my mom, Kathy Kurt. Love you, Mom.